Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a detailed biography of Paul Morphy. If you know chess, you know the name, but we're going beyond the board to unravel the unbelievable and honestly super tragic hero's journey of the man they called the pride and sorrow of chess. He was the undisputed genius of the game, a guy who conquered the globe in a matter of months, only to turn his back on the whole shebang. We're going to look closely at his meteoric rise and, more importantly, that deeply mysterious fall. Okay, just listen to this quote for a second. The ability to play chess well is the sign of a wasted life. Wow, right? Coming from the undisputed greatest chess mind of the 19th century, that's a literally chilling declaration. Just imagine the sheer weight of being an absolute genius at something you ultimately view as completely pointless. I mean, think about it. By the time most of us are just kind of figuring out who we are, Morphy had already conquered his entire field and then just walked away. Forever. We really have to ask ourselves, how does an international superstar who completely dominated Europe and came home a national hero just vanish from the game at age 22? Well, to understand this mystery, we have to look at the world that created him. So, let's start with Section 1, the New Orleans prodigy, a mind like no other. Picture this, 1837, New Orleans. Morphy is born into this wealthy, aristocratic Creole family where chess and music are just everywhere. But here's the wild part. He was never actually formally taught how to play. He literally just absorbed the game by quietly watching his dad and his uncle. At 8 years old, he shocked everyone by pointing out a missed win. By 9, he humiliated U.S. General Winfield Scott in just 6 moves. And before he even hit his teenage years, he was casually crushing international masters like Johann Lowenthal. Insane, right? And his brain wasn't just wired for chess. At just 20 years old, he earned his law degree. Legend has it he actually memorized the entire Louisiana Book of Codes and Laws. Plus, he was fluently speaking English, Spanish, French, and German. His intellectual capacity was just off the charts, which, makes his later decline all the more heartbreaking. Moving on to Section 2, Conquering the Chess World, the American Comet. So here's the kicker. Because he was technically too young to actually practice law after graduating, he had all this free time. So what does he do? He turns his sights on conquering the chess world. And he was a blazing comet. He wins the first American Chess Congress in 1857, sails over to Europe to take down the Old World Masters in 58, and comes back home to the US in 59 to retire. In less than 3 years, he completely redefined the entire game. Look at these scores. He didn't just barely scrape by the greatest European masters, he absolutely routed them. It was a display of undeniable dominance. And get this, the absolute craziest detail of his European tour, he crushed Adolf Anderssen, who was pretty much the unofficial world champion back then, 7 wins to 2, while severely sick with the flu. He was literally playing from his hotel bed. To give you an idea of his celebrity status at the time, Prince Golitsyn literally traveled all the way from the frontiers of Siberia to Paris, just for the chance to see this 21-year-old American play in person. Morphy wasn't just a strong player anymore, he was a massive global phenomenon. Which brings us to Section 3, a revolutionary playing style, rewriting the rules. You see, Morphy wasn't just winning games, he was playing a sport no one else understood yet. Even Adolf Anderssen realized that trying to fight Morphy's precision was completely futile. He famously noted that playing him was like fighting a flawless, merciless machine. Garry Kasparov actually noted later on that Morphy totally abandoned the Romantic era style of chess. That era where everyone was obsessed with reckless, flashy, premature attacks. Yeah, Morphy didn't do that. He approached the board like a scientist. He proved that brilliant tactics only work if they're built on a rock-solid foundation, rapid development, absolute domination of the center, and the creation of open files. He mastered those core principles decades before anyone else even caught on. All right, Section 4, the abrupt retirement. A mere chess player. So, he comes back to America to massive parades and adoring crowds, right? But the transition back to normal life was a total disaster. First off, he refused to play anyone without giving them these massive, honestly kind of insulting advantages. Then he desperately tries to launch his law career, but people only came to his office to stare at the chess genius. Nobody wanted a lawyer, they wanted a sideshow. The real gut punch, though, the woman he loved rejected him because she absolutely refused to marry, quote, a mere chess player. And then the Civil War breaks out. Being opposed to secession, Morphy found himself caught in the middle and was forced into a lonely exile in Paris and Cuba.
The whole thing just drove him into a deep, inescapable isolation.
And this brings us to the darkest, most debated chapter of his detailed biography. Was Paul Morphy truly mad? Because as his isolation grew in his later years, it apparently gave way to severe, debilitating paranoia. He started thinking people were trying to set fire to his clothes. He wouldn't eat anything unless his mother or sister prepared it because he was terrified of being poisoned. And people would frequently see him wandering the French Quarter, having full-blown conversations with invisible people.
Let's dig into that in Section 5, Madness or Espionage, the final mystery.
So we really need to look at both sides impartially here. On one hand, you've got the classic tragedy, a disintegrating mind succumbing to paranoia and severe mental illness in an era way before modern psychiatry. But there's also this fascinating alternative theory regarding a geopolitical conspiracy. Think about it. Morphy had unmatched pattern recognition. That is a skill highly valued in military intelligence and cryptography. Given the immense tensions of the Civil War, could his paranoia about being watched and pursued have been rooted in actual surveillance by intelligence operatives? Was his silence actually forced?
And the whole madness narrative isn't actually as clear-cut as people think. Just a year before Morphy died, Wilhelm Steinitz, the first official world champion, visited New Orleans. Steinitz was totally expecting to find a madman, but instead, he reported that Morphy was highly interesting, shrewd, practical, and seemingly in excellent health. So that undeniable genius was still in there, occasionally shining through the fog. Ultimately, though, the story reaches a sudden and really sad end. On July 10, 1884, at just 47 years old, Morphy drew a cold bath to escape the oppressive New Orleans heat, and he suffered a fatal stroke. As the poet Leona Queiroz beautifully and mournfully noted, he left his chessmen forever untouched on his table, a contest never to be decided. So we're left with this lingering question. The man known as the pride and sorrow of chess literally redefined human intellectual capability, only to spend his final decades running from his own shadow. Was Paul Morphy a victim of his own mind, or a casualty of an era that simply couldn't handle his genius? It's an incredible mystery, and honestly, it makes his legacy something we will never forget.